So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at a new feature that was added in Studio One version 6.2, which is the ability to copy sends with automation. Okay, so let's dive in. I've got an example session pulled up over here. We don't really need to hear anything in terms of the volume, but if we take a look at this, notice that we have a track over here. Let's assume this is a lead vocal. We have automation for volume, automation for pan, and then we have all of our different sends over here. We have send automation for everything. In addition to that, we also have a compressor running on our delay, and the compressor is listening to the sidechain input of a vocal track, and this is in pre-fader mode. Okay, so if we take a look at this track, let's assume a scenario. Let's assume that we've recorded a scratch vocal and we've gone ahead and we've used a bunch of different processing. We dialed in the perfect amount of reverb. Maybe it's different on the verses and the choruses. In addition to that, a little bit of stereo width, and also we have a delay happening, and the delay is ducking under the actual lead vocal. So the dry signal of the lead vocal is being fed into the delay, and the compressor that's on the delay return is listening to that. So let's say then we re-record a vocal and we have a brand new vocal track. If I've already gone ahead and done all of that automation, it's worth mentioning that it would probably be a good idea to keep that at least as a starting point. So if we click and hold, we've always been able to drag sends like this. So this will drag all the sends over, and then we have the new sends that have been created on the new vocal track. But if we open this up and we take a look at the automation envelopes, notice we only have volume and pan. So that's one option over here. Let me go ahead and remove these for a second. Now, I also want to make note of something else. We have the ability to copy the channel settings, and then we can right click and we can paste the channel settings. And this will bring over all the sends. But again, if we take a look at the automation, it has only brought over the volume and the pan automation. So we're going to come back to this point later. Now, I'm going to remove all. And in this case, I'm going to click, hold, and drag right across here. But I'm going to add the Alter Option modifier key. And notice that this says copy send slot Valhalla Vintage Verb plus automation. Okay, let's do this. Let's just move this off the screen. Each one of these plugins are going to pop open when I do this, but that's okay. So we'll go like this, all right? And then we'll go like this. Again, I'm holding down the Alter Option modifier. Very quickly, I am able to copy all of these sends over. Now, notice what happened here with all of the automation. The envelopes are open for the new vocal track, and we're viewing all the automation. It has the exact same automation. That is amazing as a starting point. Now, we also have the issue over here where if we want to copy over the send automation, plus we also want to copy the volume, we can just combine the two of these. What do I mean by this? Okay, let me remove all of these for a moment. We'll remove all. Let's say that I didn't have any of this automation over here, and I didn't have any of this automation over here. Let's say that this was a brand new track that we had started from scratch, and we'll recenter this automation position over here for the panning. So let's say that this one right over here is brand new, and we'll put this into off mode. If I wanted to do this really, really quickly, let's say that I had re-recorded a vocal, I could just do this in two steps. The first one is copy and paste the channel settings. And then if I want to have all of the send automation, and that brought over the volume and the pan, and then if I wanted the send automation, I could just copy all of these with holding the Alter Option modifier, click, hold, and drag. And now I have the full entire track. I've essentially rebuilt this with all the automation. Now, if we hop over to the compressor, take a look over here in the sidechain, we now have a check mark for the scratch vocal and the new vocal. Let's say we're no longer using the scratch vocal and we want to have the new vocal be in place of this. All I have to do is uncheck this. It disappears from the original track. Or another thing that we could do is we could come to the original track and we could just reactivate this here. In terms of the pre-fader, I could deactivate this plugin, and now this would be doing the same thing. So even though the compressor is looking to listen to the scratch vocal, we can leave this enabled or checked, but it's going to listen to the new vocal now. So that's all well and good when we take a look at an assumed scenario where I've basically mocked up a session just to show how this works. But what I wanted to do is hop over to an actual session where the first time I saw this feature was available, I said to myself, this is going to come in very handy. So if we take a look at this session over here, this is where I left off with the mix right before I rendered it. So I don't want to get into too much detail with this, but if you're interested in the process that I like to use when I'm working with outboard gear, I'll make sure I leave a link to a video up above here. But essentially what I do is any time that I'm printing a mix, especially when I have different versions of it, I automatically set up a print track that listens to the actual track as the input, and any plugins or hardware, like you can see in this case, I'm using a WA76, and I'm also using an EQ PWA, so this is my warm audio hardware. Instead of having to recall this, I try my best to make notes over here and include that before I save the session. But instead of having to do a recall, keep in mind, look what's happening here. We're going through a Pro Q3, then I'm going into Console 1, then I'm going into a WA76, then I'm going into an EQ PWA, so an 1176 style hardware compressor and a Pultec style hardware EQ. Then I'm going into a FabFilter Pro DS, and then I'm going into an Oxford Dynamic EQ. That is a lot of different stuff that I'm going through. So what I want to do is anytime that I recall a mix, I want to be able to recall all the different versions of that mix. So I work in a layers format where you can see over here, I have all the different takes that were associated with here. They've all been printed in real time, and I print these at the exact same time that I'm printing my stereo instrumental track. So everything gets printed together. Now, the first thing that comes to mind, like I said, when I saw this, I was digressing, I was trying to explain something, but the first thing that came to mind is, okay, well, I'm already printing any automation in terms of volume automation, and I'm already printing every single one of these. So if we were to solo this track out, we're going to hear it exactly as it left off when I printed it.
What can make your body fall into a groove? What can make you really shake and make you move?
So this is a mono print of all of the processing that I did over here. Also, you can hear in the background that this was cut live off the floor. Pretty impressive in terms of the vocal performance that this artist delivered. So if I had a situation where I had send automation that was happening for these tracks, I don't in this case, but let's say that I had side chains or anything like that, then the first thing that I would want to do is just use this same function over here. Copy the sends with the automation so that anything that's happening on this track is now happening in the exact same way that it was when I printed this track. Now, in terms of being able to render this and in terms of being able to play this back and have it play back the exact same way, this is now going to work. And I could potentially just deactivate this one track altogether just by right-clicking, and then we have the ability to, where is it? Disable the track. This is disabling all the sends and everything, and then now I could basically bring in this print track in place of the song. So if I was saving an archived version, this is what I would do for any track that I had used either hardware or compressors, especially if I had send automation that was happening. I would just go through, copy the sends with automation. This would work great if there was side chains or anything that was being used. And then this would be my final stage of archiving. And at that point, I wouldn't even need this lead vocal in place anymore. I've already done the routing. It's going to the same place. This should be a one-to-one of exactly how it was printed when I rendered this. At this point, I could actually just hide this track. And then we could play this song and we could just mute the instrumentals that we have here. And this should play exactly like it did.
What can make your body fall into a groove? What can make you really shake it?
So that is a in-use example of using the copy send effects with automation, how we use it in general, and then how it really comes in handy in a real-world situation. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll catch you for more in the next one. Cheers.